So welcome and welcome, welcome, welcome. Thank you so much for joining this presentation. We are so thankful that we're able to offer these services even in this truly crazy time in the world, and so happy that we can create a little bit of good for you today. So how are you feeling? I do think that, this is a feedback presentation. So yeah, how are you feeling? Are you feeling great today? And this is honest, right? Like, I think with the current crisis that we're all living through and experiencing minute by minute, I think it's really good to get little tests of yourself. Like, how are you feeling? This is also about feedback. So this is a big presentation about feelings. I'm in the green to lime area, or the yellow to lime area. I feel like my motivation's really low. I'm very glad to be talking to you today, but it's tough, right? It's tough. So I think there's a lot of opportunities to create good in all of this, but also to be honest with our feelings and with how we really feel. And we're so glad that you're here today. That you're able to take this time out of your day to join us, to talking about feedback and learning a little bit more about Create Good Conference, but also just this opportunity to, grow your skill set, right? The Create Good is really honestly always about growing your skill set, and that this is a cool opportunity if you have the time to be able to do that. And so thank you so much for joining us and just taking this time to expand your nonprofit communication skill set. And I'd really like to invite all of you to attend Create Good. So Create Good is a now online conference that is specifically made for nonprofit communicators. So this is our 6th year in North Carolina. We do it in Durham. And this year it is completely 100% online. We decided 2 weeks ago to make it an online conference so that we could still, again, create good and enrich the community with sharing the skill set from amazing nonprofit professionals from around the country. And so with the ticket of $200, you're going to get access to 20 sessions from leading nonprofit communicators across the country. And so we're going to present both a live session, so you can come in, ask questions, that sort of thing. We're also recording it, and then everybody gets access to those recordings who buy a ticket. So it's a great opportunity to expand your skill set and get a library of content that you can use throughout the year. The live sessions will hopefully be the 23rd and 24th of April. So we're still, a couple weeks out from that. So we'll see where our country is in 4 weeks from now. But it will be online no matter what. We've already pulled the plug. Like, it'll always be online for this year. But yeah, I really hope that you can join us. And it's at creategoodconference.com. You can learn more about the speakers, the sessions, and the tickets there. So with that transition, I am going to go ahead and start my session on feedback that doesn't suck. This issue is really near and dear to my heart. It's something that is just really important to me, and something that I really strive to learn from every day and try to be better about. So a little bit about BCDC Ideas. We are a full-service communications agency that works with nonprofits exclusively around the country. We have about 12 years of dedicated nonprofit experience plus 7 years of corporate advertising experience to keep that blue sky thinking happening. But we are really here for the service of nonprofits. I'm Dawn Crawford. I'm the owner and lead communicator of BCDC Ideas. I'm the DC of the BCDC, and my husband, Brian Crawford, is the BC. And we offer communication services, a full gamut. So everything from planning to social media implementation, branding, video development, everything like that. Right now, we're doing a lot of crisis communications for our clients. And so really that full gamut of everything that a communications folks could, should, and would do. Okay, so feedback. a little bit about why feedback is important to me. So for me, it's the red pen of death, right? I remember very distinctly working with my mom in like 3rd grade on a writing assignment. It was something that I was really proud of, my creativity. I was really proud of creating this story about this cat who traveled to Paris, and I remember giving it to my mom, hoping that she would give me positive feedback about the creative ideas. And the only feedback she gave me was a red pen of death. She marked it up. She told me how it was grammatically incorrect. She told me how everything was wrong in it. So I think that is my first memory of feedback. And then I've had an amazing opportunity of giving people so much feedback throughout my career. In high school, I was yearbook and newspaper editor. So, not only, grammatical feedback but also content feedback, and helping and pushing people to do bigger, better work through their writing. And then in college, I have a news editorial background or degree. So again, feedback constantly from my teachers and from, the world around me, but also just giving myself that critical feedback. And then working in nonprofits for the first 8 years of my career, and learning from some really great leaders, nonprofit leaders, on good and bad feedback, right? We all have those bosses that we all know that are awful at giving feedback. And then now, as the owner of a communications agency, we'll be 10 years old in November, and we've had over 100 different nonprofit clients. So that also means I've had over 100 different bosses in the last 10 years of folks giving us feedback, giving our team feedback, but also me giving them feedback about how to make their communications more efficient, more effective, and how to best serve and fulfill their mission. So I think I'm a really, really interesting opportunity in giving feedback, that I'm able to, learn from a lot of different people about feedback styles, about things that work really well. And I'm really able to be very self-critical about what feedback works, what feedback doesn't. And also, I just receive a lot of feedback every day. I have, right now, I think I have 13 different standing meetings with clients. And so I have 13 opportunities every week to get verbal feedback from the folks that I work for. So I think it's a really interesting opportunity to share all this depth of knowledge of how feedback makes you feel, and how to do it better, and how to be more efficient with your feedback cycle. So some truths about feedback, in my experience, these are kind of the top 5 things that I've really kind of are the core of what feedback's all about. So getting feedback can be a deeply personal experience for many people. It's easy to write. You just sit in front of a typewriter and bleed. That the content creators are people who are putting themselves out there and taking risks every day with the content that they're writing. So whether it's a blog post, a major report, a financial report, anything, that it's this opportunity. It can be very personally, a personal experience to receive feedback. That giving good feedback is just as hard. So not only is receiving feedback hard for some people, but also giving feedback for some people is very difficult. Can also be very kind of personal and emotional experience, that they feel that, maybe they like the power of it. Maybe they're intimidated by the power of it. I think there's a lot of things in both those cycles of both getting and receiving feedback. And then every great writer has a good editor. We also really firmly believe at BCDC Ideas that content is a process. So creating anything is a process, and it needs feedback to make it better and awesome. And so we really work hard on creating the best content through feedback. And that feedback and revisions are a critical component to making a powerful product. So again, it's so important. Feedback is critical to your work. So it's about managing how you respond to it and how the people around you are giving you feedback to make it a useful tool. And then also remember that feedback doesn't have to hurt. I'm going to talk about at the very end of this session about when feedback is truly damaging, right? That there's lots of ways to give great constructive feedback, but there's also certainly personalities and processes that are hurtful and can permanently damage your spirit of creativity, and that if those are happening, that you need to get out of those situations. Okay, so we have a little poll here. This is great. We're getting some good responses here. We have some top line kind of scary. It feels like maybe somebody was saying that positive feedback can be empowering. It can be confusing. Feedback can certainly be confusing. That is often something, yes, one of my favorite phrases for confusing feedback is, so tell me a little bit more about what that means to you. I think there's absolutely asking for more clarity on how people feel about their things. And yeah, unclear, personal, vulnerable, nerve-wracking, self-conscious. Yeah, you're exposing yourself, right? You're like, presenting your ideas, your thoughts, sometimes your hopes and dreams, if you're thinking about, a project and a plan of, kind of sharing it very vulnerably. Thank you for this. So, about receiving feedback. So this is certainly, I think this is kind of an aha moment for a lot of folks, is that you are in control of how you receive feedback, your feedback process, and also how you personally feel about the feedback that you're receiving. So realize this truth, that most feedback at work isn't personal. So if you're working with good people and you're working with non-psychopathic folks, it's not personal. It's not about, Dawn, I think you're dumb. It's about, I want this product to be better. And I think if you can always frame that, and knowing and trusting the people that you're working with, that it is about making the product better, that can help you manage your kind of personal response to feedback. Feedback gives me anxiety. It still does. I think I really work on, my own personal response to feedback every single day. So the feedback cycle. So you start with create, and you're in this space where you're creating all this cool stuff, and then, you birth it into the world and you want to share it with somebody to get some feedback. So you give feedback, and then you need to manage your response about how you are managing it and how you're feeling about when you receive that feedback. And then ultimately you want to go through the process of making changes. So this is really where you want to master this one, is about managing your response. I think, so we have a 7-year-old, she fights with friends at school. She comes home and talks to me about fighting with friends at school. And I say, so, you can't change that person necessarily, but you can manage the way that you feel around them. And if you don't feel good about it, leave, which is the ultimate, even in a job, you can still leave if you hate it. But it really is about managing and your own response. So I think this is really the key in receiving feedback, is so managing this one and really managing your opportunity, and then so that you're ready to make changes. So there's 3 types of feedback that we receive in general from the folks that we work with. Is that first, there's this tough skin. So, that the changes are constructive and useful, and there's more work to do, right? That you just have to have tough skin and just get it done. Let the feedback roll off your back like a duck in water and just keep moving forward. You just have to have tough skin. And I think most communicators have tough skin, right? We're used to receiving a lot of feedback, and most of us are really at this point. There's also this idea of tough love. So sometimes your manager or your boss needs to give you feedback that is not only just about the process of your writing or, the ideas, but also that, it's definitely something a little step beyond. It is more about the improvement of your process or improvement of you and your skill sets. So for tough love, it's sometimes, that your lack of improvement is bothering your reviewer, and that there might be giving you this feedback for your own growth. So this is often that feedback that you receive in annual reviews, or if you do monthly check-ins, anything like that. You know, and it's probably because you're making the mistake over and over and over again, and that you need to change your own process about that. So it can be about writing. It could be about the way that you're doing a process, even like time cards and things like that. That this tough love is really about that, you know, you do need to take this almost as personal feedback, and that, you know, that it's okay just as long as it stays in that constructive zone, and that people give you the opportunity to give you tactical things to improve it, right? And I think that's the thing. If you're feeling a little vulnerable and attacked in your feedback, that it's always good to ask people, like, so what are some steps I could take to change this, right? What can I do to change it? And then there's just tough. There's just kind of awful feedback too, that when somebody gives you that feedback that's beyond your constructive criticism, and that it just rots your creative soul. So I've had clients tell me straight out, you know, and they still want to work with me after this, but like, you're not good at doing this. You know, on the phone, it's like, you guys are not good at doing this skill set. That is kind of what we do for a living. It's tough. It's not useful. It's not constructive. It's not, you know, it's what they hired us to do, and then they tell us we're not good at it, but then they still want to work with us. So I think, yeah, and it's when people are frustrated is when they usually say this just tough. So it's something to really be kind of conscious of. So I also have these kind of feedback personalities. And these have been developed over the years of working with my 100 bosses that I've had in the last 10 years. And also kind of profiling myself and our employees. And so these are the kind of feedback personalities you might encounter on a job. You have the silent but deadly, a landmine, the perfect pass-through, the DIYer, the vague vocalist, the review rager, and the one and done. So for the silent and deadly. So the silent and deadly is this person who's like the procrastinator. You know, they don't say anything, and then they ruin everything at the last minute. No matter how much you manage up and you kind of try to work through a process, they always blow things up at the end. Does that sound familiar? So if you're working with one of these types of people, you often create false deadlines. So this is something where you don't let them know that it's really due on Friday, and you tell them it's due on Wednesday, so that you have an opportunity to remind them and then have them scramble to get it done. So that is what a false deadline is. You know, that you give your extra time to absorb and react to their feedback ahead of the actual real deadline. And then that usually, you know, you just need a few days, but not give it a full week to react to their questions. So yeah, this is just one of those silent but deadly, right? Like at the very, very end, they just blow up everything. So in this presentation, I'll talk about each one, and then kind of stepping through what you can do to fix a process with all of these. This is more about just kind of identifying your personalities, your review personalities around you, and then some quick tips on how to manage them. So the landmine. You know, most of the time you're cruising along and it's fine. They're giving very, very little feedback, but then damn, if they don't hit you with a landmine, and it's a redo. So this is me. So I am absolutely a landmine, mostly because of time and resources. That most of the work for my team is perfect, right? Like we're dead on it. We're good. And then we're not good. So it's usually if I have more time, or if it's something that we didn't talk a lot about at the beginning of a project, and people are kind of creating things in a black hole, that it's a lot of redo, right? So, you know, I think how to manage this is to take their occasional redos of prescriptive feedback in round one, you know, that, yeah, most of the time, right, that is totally fine. So I also have a client who's like this. Like most of the time, she has just small changes, really smart, small changes. And then there's things she's like, this just isn't it. Like you hit the mark. You missed the mark on this. You completely missed it. You just need to redo it. But it's like 10% of projects, which I think is really low. And so it's totally fine. And it's a great feedback. It's opportunity for us to, restart something, which is fine. I think in this, what you really want to do is just challenge the most critical pieces and then let the rest go. So you really want to pick your battles with Landmine people. There's really not a lot of opportunity to go back and forth with them because they've also kind of made their mind up that it needs to be a redo. So there's not a lot of opportunity to manage around it. And that, just know that they love most of your work and that maybe this one just didn't hit the mark. So usually around 10% of any creative, higher than that for some people, but about 10% of our projects at the agency are things that are just complete redos. They didn't work, right? And so we just have to redo them. And so just as long as we're managing it around 10%, then I think that's successful. And then after the deadline, do a document compare and then really ask them about how that you can grow on the next project. I think Landmine people are also very good because they're very critical thinkers and they're folks who, they're making thoughtful choices. The perfect pass-through. So this is the person who says, I love everything. You know what that really means is that they read about 10% of it and they trust you to do your job. This personality is great in the moment, but the reality is that you're not growing or collaborating. So we definitely have clients that are like this, that are, they just love all their work and it's fine. But also that means that they're really trusting us to carry a lot of the responsibility burden. And that it's hard, right? Because we're not knowledge experts in their area. So these kind of bosses feel great, but you're not learning anything from them. You're not learning anything about how to make your work better. So you want to check in with them after the deadline to make sure that they didn't have any feedback that could help you grow or learn on the next piece. And then tell them that you want to learn from their experience in this subject. Tell them that you want their feedback. Often this perfect pass-through folks are people who are afraid of giving feedback or afraid of hurting your feelings or, just don't like conflict. So, but that also means you're losing out. And then also if they're still happy-go-lucky, take it as a blessing. Very few people have this boss and, you do have the best reviewer style. Like this is what people dream of. So the next style is the DIYer. So the DIYer is the person who comes back and completely rewrites with very little time for you to collaborate on the rewrite. So this is the folks who just do it themselves. They ask you to do it, but, they just want to do it themselves. This is actually the most destructive style of feedback. So giving complete rewritten feedback without any opportunity for the person who created it to help, to learn from it or learn from you or learn about why you made those changes is completely destructive. It doesn't allow any collaboration from the people who you work with. And if you feel that yourself is a DIYer, really examine why you're doing that and really think about if there's ways of letting people collaborate. So I think how to manage this is really to confront your reviewer on this style. So this is what I often have to do with our clients who are DIYers, is tell them that, okay, so you hired us and paid us to write this content, tell me why you're completely rewriting it. And that, that we're not learning anything from that process and they're losing a lot of value of not letting us contribute to the content. So, after the deadline, sit down and do a document compare with your reviewer and understand why they made the prescriptive changes. Understand why they like that word better than your word. Because that's what we're talking about. They just like some word over your word. And really challenge them and ask them why. And then ask them, that there needs to be more time built in for you to go through every single round of feedback. That you're not learning anything from them coming in and doing it for you. The vague vocalist. So the vague vocalist is that person who, they're very philosophical. So Brian at BCDC Ideas is very much a vague vocalist. He's getting better, but he's the kind of guy who writes in the margin of, you know, it'd be great if we had more resources here. Or I feel like you could work on this paragraph more. Or I don't know if this color is the right color. So it's this idea that you know that they want something to change. I think they're letting you show what you want to do with the change, but the thing is you don't have the right box for them to meet their expectations. So it's like, oh, I see a lot of typos. That's another one I hate from vague vocalists. Oh, I see a lot of typos. Like, okay, so clearly I'm not seeing those errors, so I need you to help me out. So, you know, that this reviewer style is really trying to let you do your job and remain creative, but that it's really hard to understand what they want, and that your job is really to get them to express at least a smaller box of what they want, right? Like, you can't keep guessing. And you want to identify the most vague feedback and have them explain it and give you a punch list of things that they need to do. And then making them do the work does help solve the vagueness. So if you're like, okay, so yeah, you want to add a page about coronavirus. So tell me, what does that mean? Do you want me to talk about like the epidemiology? Do you want me to talk about our response? Do you want me to talk about how it's spread? Do you want me to talk about how it's tested? Like, we need to know what that person's looking for. The review rager. So this is the person who everything is wrong, and even if it was right last time, there's the good one. Even if it was right the last time you wrote it, it's totally wrong now. And you'll usually get a comment of, why is it like this? So I slide into rage raver or review rager when I'm really stressed. This is definitely my worst feedback personality, and that, yeah. And then some people function in this personality all the time. This can be also a very damaging personality to have on your team. So I think what you have to do if you're managing this type of reviewer is to take their feedback as prescriptive in round one. Like, you just have to do it. These are dictator bosses that want it their way. So, you know, there's no need for you to like kick the hive on this. Just get the work done. And then after the deadline, ask them if there are ways that you can give them more time where you're not as stressed. So, you know, it's, you know, and ask them about both creative style guide, like ask them for ways to make your life easier. So if they always want you to use a word, then they need to tell you that. If they always want you to use a color, they need to tell you that. So I think the more they can be prescriptive in the things that bug the crap out of them, the more that you can figure out how to manage that. And then also, like, you also need to be prepared for some tough love conversations. So these folks are also going to be the one be like, well, you know that you do this all the time. Or you know, they're going to talk in a lot of you statements of like, well, you don't give me enough time to review it. Or, you know that we talked about this before. It's, you know, just be ready for some of that tough love conversation, that it might be about things that you can improve on. And then the one and done. So this is the last personality I've kind of identified. And these are the folks who expect the first draft to be the only draft. And this is something that I really experience in people who are new to a creative process, who are not used to working with a team of creatives or like an agency, or even just are new to communications in general, that they really don't understand that creative is an iterative process and that it takes rounds, right? That when I turn in, and it's also, I think it's people who are kind of feel like they're a teacher, right? So they're like, okay, so you need to go do this project. You need to write me some social on the next event we're having, and I want to see it. Like, cool. So you do that, and then you turn it. It's like you're turning it in, and they expect it to be an A+, right? And that's not how creative work, and that's not how work works, right? Like, you always should be receiving feedback and having opportunities to improve it and work on it together. And so this isn't really a healthy style, and that, you know, you're not in the business of mind reading. I think that's something I point out right away when people are like that. When we have new clients that are like that, is that it's like, so I can't read your mind, and I can't guess what's going to be perfect for you. And that this is an opportunity for us to work together, and that you need to look at this as a collaboration, not as a transaction, right? That a transaction is something, I give this to you, you take it home and you're done with it, right? But this is a collaboration, and that it's going to take some rounds. And that also, changes and feedback are not mistakes or blatant errors, but it's a healthy process of collaboration and creative production. So one and doneers are also, I think, kind of like either they like the power or they hate the power of feedback, and they see changes and mistakes as wrong, as things that you've done wrong, that they haven't done right in communicating to you, that there's something wrong with that process. And it's just not true, right? Like feedback changes, all this stuff, right? Like it's not like any human is born walking, right? That it takes all of us a lot of mistakes and a lot of head bumps to get to the point where we're able to walk. And so I think this is the same idea, that everything's a collaborative, iterative process. And that every document takes at least 2 rounds to get out the door, that it always takes rounds, and that just help them understand that it's healthy, a productive process that they can work on with you. So, yeah, what type of feedback personality are you? Which one do you see yourself in? And how do you kind of give people feedback? Cool. Thank you for that. Okay, so now you know the kind of emotional feedback you'll be receiving. So that tough love, the tough skin, the tough love, and then the just sucks feedback. And then we also have our personalities of, folks who are around you, and also yourself, of what type of reviewer you are. I saw a lot of DIYers. It's true, communications folks, like, of course we're right. Of course we know exactly what we're doing. And this is what we do, right, is receive and give feedback all day. So how do you take control of feedback? So I think that's the novel idea, is how do you take control of it? How do you change your process so that review is more constructive, it's more positive, and it's just more useful for you? So this is key to efficient, effective feedback, is minimizing your rounds of feedback. Minimize the opportunities for people to get emotional, to make mistakes, to have indecisiveness. So we work really, really hard on having only 2 rounds of edits, plus a kind of final check for press. So we have 2 rounds of constructive feedback. So 2 opportunities for people to fuss with things. This is for everything. This is for videos. This is for logo development. This is for presentations, events, social. It's 2 rounds, 2 opportunities. So that is pretty novel, and that is pretty surprising to most people that we work with, that they're very used to being able to fuss with things for 30 rounds. It's not okay. It's not okay. It's damaging to the feedback process to have that much opportunity to fuss. And it really is just fussing past 2 rounds. So, also with good feedback, there's also something that you need to take responsibility for, and it is all about your first draft. So you need to own the feedback process through your first draft being your best draft. I think that's something a lot of people do, creatives, is that we kind of, serve out there like this little 70% done, soft, it could receive some improvement, what do you think, type of work. And that is not useful to a review team, because they don't need to review it again, right? So you need to give, your best work and your most complete work in your first draft. I think you can always get check-ins and things, but that really your first draft needs to be the best it can be, because it's a complete waste of time for other people to waste their time reviewing on your half-baked ideas and soft ideas. I think that Yeah, it needs to be what you think is best. Often though, my caveat with that with DIY people, I only give them my 70%. If we have a client who is consistently DIY, I will give them less effort in round one because I know that they're going to change it. So it's not worth us to get it over that final 30%. And yeah, so I think that's something else, is that if you have a DIYer, and that's why it's the most destructive, because it just doesn't motivate you to do work. But yeah, so the people around you, if you're a DIY person, they are only giving you your 70 to 80% because they know that you're just going to fuss with it and change it and fix it. So that's something to live with. Okay, so on your first draft, really easy, simple checklist of what you want. So is it spell checked? You know, it's super simple fix, but it's also relieves a ton of annoyance from your reviewer. This is often something that I have to do with new employees even. It's just, for the first 3 months, it's just reminding them to do a simple spell check. It's a funny thing, a funny part of the process that I think that people don't take the time to do. Reread it at least twice to catch oddness and trailing thoughts. That's just old school editing process, right? And then also review the purpose and intent of the work. Does what you're doing meet the original goal set forth by the project, by your boss, by your client, by whoever? So really make sure that it's doing its job. And then always double check if you do have a style guide or anything like that, that you're meeting their expectations of what this project should be. Okay, so yes, a constructive feedback process. This is what it looks like to have a good process. First off, you want to have a kickoff. So your kickoff is your opportunity to go through the project as assigned. This is your time to ask all your questions. You know, these can usually take 30 minutes to an hour, but just really fully make sure that you understand who the audience is, what the purpose of the project is, when it's due, where it's going. So, you know, is it going on the blog or is it going on social? Like, those are two different things and a whole lot different amount of effort. And then what's the goal? Why are you doing this? And what is it trying to accomplish? Then you have a check-in. So we don't do these very often, but I do think within an internal team, it's a good idea, especially if you're trying to learn from your reviewer. It's not for them to look at your copy or your design or your work. It's really for you to ask questions of like, so I had this section that I was thinking about including. What do you think? Should we include it? But it's not about them reading it. It's not about them taking time to read it and process it. It's more about you asking questions of things that you think are soft or need that extra work. And then this can also be in person or just a list of questions so that they can respond. Okay, and then this is where it gets sticky, is this rounds for creation. So, you know, we want it to look like this, right? That we have creation, and then we have round one, which is really where you want to get the most feedback. And then you have round two, where you're able to clean up things, and then it's off to production, completion, posted on the website, whatever. But often it starts looking like this, right? So you have this creation, and then you have round one. And you're like, oh, look, I got all the feedback, great. And then you turn around, and you're like, okay, so is it ready to go? And it's like, oh, no, round two, oh, no, Susan needs to comment on it now, right? So let's get Susan. Susan needs to see it. And then round four comes around, it's like, wait, you know, I mean, so is this really supporting the project? Is this really how this should be? Maybe we should just table this whole project. Maybe we should just not send it out. And then you're like, no, it needs to go. And then there's round five, like, hey, wait, oh, well, you know, Steve's on vacation and he just got back and he has 5 million changes and he's really critical and you need to listen to his opinion. And then you maybe get to completion. Or in a lot of nonprofits, things just die. And that is so frustrating because you just lived through 5 rounds of changes for something to die. And I think, you know, this is why this type of process is destructive and it should not be included or allowed on projects. So this is what you ideally want, is this really tight review process. So you have creation. So you are creating your most complete, perfect document you've ever created for this purpose ever. And then double check to meet the goals and like do all your work that, you know, we really have the process of your first draft is your 100%, and then you need to kiss it and let it go. It is not part of, you know, it has a bigger job now. It has, you know, work from other people to contribute. So round one is the work time, right? So you should get the most feedback on round one. People need to be critical. They need to be prescriptive. They need to be tough on round one, because you want to get the most detailed review and expand any holes in content, you know, make sure it meets the goal, because this is the time that is the most collaborative, is round one. That should be the time that people can tear it up and make it better. And then round two is really about getting it to completion, right? That you've made all the changes, you've fine-tuned the content, you've, you know, making sure it's mission critical, and then you do your final grammar spelling check. We often hold off on grammar checks until the very end of sending it out to like a professional proofer or something like that, until the very end, just because there's so much changes in between. But yeah, this round two, it should be, yeah, you're getting final checks before launch. You're getting final checks before people are seeing it live. And then you have completion, so really final checks, and then send it out the door. You get it out, it's done, it's live. So this really gives people a lot of opportunity. Also, if you do this and people want a round three and they don't get to give it, they don't get to give it. It's done, right? I think it's harder with your boss, but I think it's something you can work tag team with your boss to make sure that other people don't interfere with your process. So I think, you know, there is certain things you want to do before it goes live. And, you know, getting really ready for completion is checking it against the goal, do a deep dive on grammar and copy edits, you know, hire a professional when you can. And then give it a victory lap. Send it back around to everybody who gave you feedback, being like, look, I took your feedback. Thank you so much for contributing. It's going live right now. Don't change it. And then press done and get it back out. So, yeah, in the chat, you know, how does this look like your review process? You know, and then does this look like your review process at work? Are you down to three kind of, or 2 rounds? In the chat, go ahead. I already got one of like, oh, I wish that was true in our org. So then, you know, with this information and knowledge in hand, like, how are you going to change it? How can you change your feedback process? Great. Okay, so let's get to the heart of it, right? Let's get to dealing with super shitty feedback. We've all had it. You know, if it's from somebody at work or somebody, you know, else in your life, yeah, sometimes it's not great. You know, I think super awful feedback is it a pattern? Is it, you know, do you confront the feedback style and then you quit, right? So I think the important first step is looking for a pattern. So remember that people are always allowed to have bad days, especially now in our special crisis of the world. People are going to have bad days, and it's going to come and go, right? Some days you're going to be, this is fine, it's all fine, it's totally fine. And then other days you're like, this is the worst thing that has ever happened to me in my literal life. And there's no, you know, I think everybody's allowed to have a bad day. So just be kind most of the time. But if it's a pattern and then you can document unconstructive feedback, do it, right? And then it's super helpful to have several instances that the same style of hurtful feedback was exhibited. And then also just think about solutions about how you want to make the feedback more productive. Think about how you can help them help you in having a less hurtful process of feedback. And then it's really about confronting the feedback style. So you're giving people feedback on how they're giving you feedback. I know it's a little weird, but it does work really, really well. So the kind of structure for this would be like, so when you do this, I feel like it's not helping me be successful on this project. It would be easier for me to understand and complete feedback if you were able to do this. So this could be more concrete content or comments, more time, that you're not doing it at the very last minute, that I receive your feedback by noon so that we work on it together to get it out the door by 5. One thing we've done for this too is that we've moved things into Google Docs so that people can see each other's feedback on a document. And that finally ask them, can we work together to make this process, this feedback, a more productive feedback process? That's the thing, right? You just want a more productive feedback process. And then there's times when you should just quit. There's times we've quit clients over their feedback styles, and that we don't let our staff get treated in certain ways. And it's really around, it's around feedback usually. So, when can you escalate it to their boss, to HR, to their boss? If they get super defensive or they just act like a jerk, and take it to their boss. Your boss should not be defensive or critical about you giving them feedback. And then, that unconstructive feedback will rot your soul. It makes you less productive, less happy. And there's lots of ways to manage this, but that, it's just, it's still not working, just quit. There's nothing more demotivating than creatively destructive feedback. I don't have anything else to say. It's just, if you feel like you've tried helping people give you better feedback and it still hurts, it's not worth it. So, I think with all of this in mind, that we are all living in this virtual feedback environment. So how has virtual feedback made feedback easier or tougher for you? Interesting. So it's easier not giving a lot of feedback face to face. Yeah, certainly. You can be more thoughtful and write a sentence and then delete it and then write a sentence and delete it a couple times. Interesting. We have anonymous virtual feedback, which sort of turns into cyberbullying in a way. Interesting. It's tougher because you can't see facial expressions or read body. Yep. People are definitely preferring face-to-face. Actually, the anonymous virtual feedback is interesting because, the anonymity is awful. I think that's awful. You're right, because people are like, well, I just don't like this. And then you can't find out who said it to follow up either. That's awful. I don't like that. I don't like it. So many people sending conflicting suggestions. So one thing we've done with that is actually, moving things into Google Docs. So moving a document into Google Docs and then having people review it and then pulling it back into Word or whatever you're using has been really helpful for people to see each other's feedback and see if they've given it, 5 people have given the same feedback, or for people to kind of go back and forth and decide what is the right answer. So that's been really helpful for us, is moving things into Google Docs. Yes, so benefits, introvert time to internally process. Yes. So you're not asked in the moment, so why is it like this? And it's let me go, let me have a minute, just a hot minute, please. Absolutely. Great. Thank you for that. So in conclusion, and this is great for nonprofit communicators and every communicator and every human, honestly, right now to hear, is that perfection is impossible. There is so much opportunity for seeing things differently that perfection is never going to be achieved. So the more that you can live with that and know that your best work is the best you can do is the truth that you should be living. And that collaboration is magic, that giving your work up to somebody else to help you make it better is a beautiful, wonderful thing about being a smart, educated professional in this world. that it is a fantastic thing to have somebody else leapfrog off your idea and help make it better. And that's how real good innovative work happens in nonprofits and in industry. You know, that collaboration is magic. Collaboration is everything. And that the best thing that happens in our team is when I don't know who came up with the idea. And that is what I love. And I think that's the really cool thing, is when it's our idea, not my idea. So yeah, go ahead and give me some feedback. So tell me about this presentation. And if you want to ask questions, go ahead in the chat. Or you can unmute your phone and ask a question. It's up to you. But also, this is a good example. You know, you don't have to ask for negative feedback. You can only give people opportunities to give you good feedback. So yeah, any questions? Ooh, so my team does not produce written products. They are face-to-face with clients. Any advice? So I think that is about creating shared language. So for me, I would start every one of those meetings where there's feedback with some shared language, so that everybody knows, everybody's talking the same language, right? That everybody has the same meaning for this was good work or this was bad work. So I would say that, and I think it's a lot of clarifying questions. So some of the questions I use when we do that is, so tell me a little bit more about that. It's something I use a lot, of understanding feedback. Or so what does that look like to you? So if they're like, I don't like how this worked. Okay, so tell me how it could have worked, how it looks, how a perfect scenario looks like to you. I think it's about yeah, really about creating those language, a lot of clarifying questions. Cool. Yeah, and then thank you. I loved your just quit answer. It feels like it's rare that you hear that, but it sounds like it's better than just trying to keep to make it work. Absolutely. And I think in creative spaces where we have to keep producing creative content, if you have a destructive reviewer, then it's just not worth it. It's not worth it. There's plenty, I mean, hopefully there'll be plenty of other jobs, and there's always different opportunities of figuring out how to make it better in someplace else. And perhaps you said it, but I missed it, but what's the best feedback out of the ones you mentioned? I would have to say it is the kind of Landmine, I think, is one of the best ones, because they truly do trust you, right? That yeah, so we definitely have a client who, yeah, she trusts us, right? And she gives us little nudges, and maybe I need to come up with another one, but she gives us little nudges all the time, right? And so she's always thoughtfully reviewing our work, giving us tiny things that she wants to improve. And then, yeah, usually it's like 1 or 2 projects a year, and we're on an annual contract with her where she's like, this just isn't right. You just need to just hit the, you know, she missed the mark. But she also gives us time to fix it. So I think that's probably the Landmine, right? That's really the best one to have. Great. Thank you. Yeah. Everybody have a great afternoon. And so how do you absorb feedback, but also maintain boundaries in the face of feedback? But not to have feedback sit too deep inside and alter your self-identity. Sometimes receiving feedback is great, and sometimes I feel like it shifts me every which way. And I'd love hints for not feeling so blown by the wind, if that makes sense. Yeah, so I usually take it personality by personality. So it's interesting in my job, because I do have 13 different bosses that I work with all the time, is that I usually, in my first couple of weeks of working time, I actually start identifying the personality type and how I've best managed that personality type in the past. And then also what I need to do to self-prepare for their feedback. So, yeah, so we have definitely some landmines. We have some people, and so I actually kind of do a internal, you know, pep talk before I open people's emails. You know, and like I'll be like, okay, so like worst case scenario, you know, this is going to happen, it's going to be fine, or that, yeah, you just kind of get ready. And so I honestly, like, every time, so all of my things where I am receiving feedback, I actually put review in the subject line. There's a big bold review. So I also know when it comes back and remind myself what it is. So I know that it's going to be feedback. So that helps me with my internal emotional stabilizing. And then also I get received feedback all the time. But yeah, I still cry over feedback. I still cry about things that people say to me. But it's rare. And I think that's also what I focus on, is that most of the feedback we receive is fantastic and that it's very rare. And so that if it really does move me, that's also something that I take a moment and step back and be like, okay, so why is this affecting me? What do I need to do to manage that, to do self-care? But also, is there something that they can do that's different? And I ask them to do it differently. So, but yeah, of course. A little Dawn therapy session there for you, a little self-vulnerability. Well, cool. So this is me, and I really hope that you join us for Create Good. And I really hope that this is helpful for you and that y'all have a great afternoon. So keep doing good and chin up, stiff upper lip, all those things from all around the world. So have a great afternoon, y'all. Bye.